welcome to our Amazing Kids Show. Today we have Jamie. He's going to be teaching us a little bit about coding, computer coding that is, and robotics. Have you been doing this for many years?
Yes, I believe 3 years ago is when I started. Yes.
That's terrific. And did you learn how to do it at school, or was there someone at home that started to get you from one thing to the other? Say, did you play video games first and then maybe want to know how those worked?
Yeah, so what really happened was until I was 7 or so, I kind of heard, I didn't really know how video games were made and stuff. And then I looked it up and I found it was like by code and stuff when I was 8, I believe is when I learned that. And so what happened was then after that I wanted to start, but I couldn't because the only website I could find was like super expensive to use. And so then at my school, they did one coding session with Scratch, and I kind of just used that for a while. And then at my new school, we used code.org, which is my personal favorite because it's a little easier to use and you have less possibilities, but it's a lot easier to code with those possibilities and you have all the possibilities you need, really, to make really fun games.
So you've always been curious about video games and how things worked, and when you continue to be curious, you can get on these websites and find different ways to make games?
Yes, and...
Sounds pretty neat.
No. So the only issue with going onto the internet and finding it is that there are so many different websites. It's very challenging to find the correct one if you're like a beginner. You want to find a free one that's easy, and normally those are the ones that are least used because eventually you get advanced enough to want to use a little bit of money to put into it.
And it makes sense. You want to try to find as much as you can for the right value. That happens to me a lot in my business. I try to find things to use on my website, and I think, well, I could do it this way for this amount of money, and I'll see how it works for now, because there are so many options out there. You have to weed through it. It's a lot of research and a lot of time spent on your computer. How much time do you think you spend on your computer a day?
It depends on the day. It depends on how much homework I have and that sort of thing. But on an average day, probably 30 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. In working and getting creative in there and doing your own thing.
Yes.
That's fantastic. And you have all these people at school to help you too. Do you go to a school that's just for science and technology?
No, I go to kind of an all-around school, but they allow you to do more advanced classes and they offer a lot more extracurricular activities. So I do more advanced classes than most of my age group, and then I also do the extracurricular robotics activities.
That's what I was wondering, if other people that are 12 years old are doing this much coding and putting themselves out there and online. Is it called publishing when you make a video game and you put it out there?
Yeah, on the website that I use at least, it's called publishing. But pretty much I have a couple of kids in my school that are my age. I have a couple of kids that are a year older than me and a couple of kids that are a year younger than me. It's me and this other kid that really do it that's my age and that have gone to the advanced level that we are at right now. The other ones are like just starting this year because the robotics club wasn't so big last year as it is this year.
Do you think the clubs help you so much to collaborate with your friends and get your ideas working together?
Yes. So actually, me and a couple of my friends started a business where we've created a couple different games and we kind of mark them under the same name and we put them onto the internet basically. And so that's kind of our business, and we're trying to just practice and try to get our name out there for the future. So then once we get our name out there, we can then use that to assist us in the future.
Right, so all of these, you're basically making a resume, and it's a working resume or a portfolio right now you're starting to do. So things that, I don't know, I didn't make my own portfolio until I was at least 18. You guys are so far ahead of most everyone else. That's really neat. You can just add to it. What kind of computer do you prefer to work on when you're doing your coding and when you're looking at these games? Does it help for you to have a screen that this is a nice, good-sized screen? And when a lot of people, I see them working on their little tiny phones or working on an iPad, it seems like this would be so much better to use and it would help you see a bigger picture.
Yeah, I prefer a screen like that's a little bit bigger, so then I can actually see everything I've done all in one spot. So a lot of times on even this size screen computer, it gets over the limit that it can fit in one little tiny screen, so I have to like scroll up and down. But that's a lot harder to find mistakes in the code and figure out how it's gonna work in such a small area, because you have to scroll up and down. You'll scan and sometimes you'll miss stuff, and that's a big issue with the programming side of it. But with a bigger screen, like what I have at school is basically just a square computer, but it's like 24 inches by 24 inches, so it has a taller screen than most average computers, so it's just a little bit
so cool.
You can just fit more up and down and left to right space than the average computer screen.
And then when you're reading your code, so most people think when they look at computer code, it's a secret code. They cannot understand it at all. But some people can look at this code and it looks like a book to them. And I think that you're one of the people, when you read it, you can read it so fast, it's almost like you're speed reading. You can kind of scan that code down very fast. Isn't that true? And then you can kind of, you get to recognize, your eye starts to make up different patterns of the code, so you can recognize if something is off pretty fast.
Yeah, so what I can do is I can really scan it a little better through the code blocks instead of the just regular code. Like if I was reading it, I could understand what some of it means. So like I've tried a little bit of basic actual typing coding on Khan Academy is what I use for that stuff. And it's basically, you're typing it and it teaches you kind of different functions that you have to use. And so that helps because I can like teach it. So I've learned so far to basically make circles and squares and stuff and shapes, and then how to color those in. I haven't figured out how to make them animate yet.
That's pretty cool. That is amazing. And just knowing that you have you have all of the resources to find out if you want to start coloring things in, that you know where to find this information. I think that's a really cool part too, is not just that you have the information, but you know where to get more.
Yeah.
And you said it's called Scratch program?
One of them is called Scratch and the other is called code.org.
And code.org.
Yes.
And these are all free programs that anybody can use if they want to start getting into coding and find out more.
And they're both public, so if you post something on one of these websites, you can make it private, but normally if you want to kind of start, you're going to want to make it public, and then everybody can use this code and kind of edit it and tweak it the way that they want to. So it's
pretty cool.
It's kind of a group website where you can, so you leave the original code out there, so the original is there, but you can copy it and add to it or remove from it or change it however you want to. So me and my friends did kind of a project, basically a charity event type thing with the art game, and we made an easy, medium, and hard level, and different grade groups, and you would pay a little bit. You would pay to like play the game, and we would have prizes and stuff, and then you'd basically put the money towards the Lenten project is what it's called, and we just have a project where we put all the money towards for that week or whatever.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, for Lent that year.
Yeah, so you get everyone excited about your game.
Yes.
Now, so can anyone go on and try to find your game? Could I go online right now and try to find your game if I wanted?
Yes. You're going to want to go to code.org is probably the main website you're going to go to. And there's normally a little link in the top. So if you end up finding my game somehow, some way, there's a little link that you can, once I published it, that you can download it to your computer or to your phone. So like you could have it on your phone.
That's pretty neat.
Yes.
Wow. So do you see yourself making apps for phones sometimes, like making those little games? I play the funny games that are like Boggle on my computer. I make little words on my phone and things.
Oh, yes, those. Yeah, I would like to code those, but I think that what I want to do is when I'm older, I want to start my own kind of video game software company.
All right.
Where we make software for video games, but it's a little more realistic than the current software. So instead of just holding a basic controller, you're going to be holding something that actually looks like what the game has. So if you were playing a shooter game or whatever, you would be holding a remote. So literally a remote that looks and feels like a gun, and the functions in the video game work the same as a gun. So cocking in real life would cock your gun in the video game.
That's pretty cool. Or
Mario Kart.
Mario Kart.
You could make it so it's actually mounted and everything, and pushing the gas pedal makes you go forward.
I love that. That is really neat. And it seems like you love all these fast action games.
Yes.
I mean, most video games are fast action games.
Sometimes I like some slower ones, such as, trying to think. I know, so at some points in the game, Arms is another one that I really like. It's a bit slower. It's not like slow, but it's like just a little bit slower than most games that I play other than Arms. And I also like games such as Minecraft, which in creative mode is a fairly slow game.
Yes, that's what I was wondering. When you're building things and it takes a little bit more time to build, like Minecraft, and how you liked those. I used to watch these really neat videos of guys that would scuba dive, and they set it to music, and it was always like a video game. And I think that you would think that was so interesting. Have you seen that, where they jump off the ships at the different times? And I wonder if you would ever make an underwater video game.
Do you mean like like those ones that can make a really cool animation in the background basically and make it look like they're scuba diving?
Well, I've seen the guys really scuba dive, but I think you could make it an animation of underwater. Yeah,
I've seen that before.
And I think that as you learn so much more, your ideas, I just see them growing. Like even since the last time we talked, I've seen your ideas grow, which is really neat. And I think it's cool that we can all log on and find your game. Tell me what it's called again.
Fire Frenzy, but
Fire Frenzy. So we can log on and find Fire Frenzy on code.org.
you have to type in easy, medium, or hard because it's technically named easy, medium, and hard. The only issue is that I don't think you can really search for a game created. You have to like actually have the web address. So
we'll have to publish the web address so we can play Jamie's game, because I definitely want to play it online. And I haven't been able to find it yet. I did try to look, but I couldn't find it. I thought it was me, but you've got it in a secret silo, I think.
It's like, oof. It's secret.
It
Nobody
is.
can find it.
It is. Now, is there anything that you would like to tell the audience about getting into coding? If somebody wants to get into coding, you think the best place to start would be online, or should they go to a group?
I would go to code.org because they are a lot easier and they have a lot better training. So it's like they have stuff that actually teaches you how to code rather than just jumping you straight into just randomly making stuff.
That's great. Well, we're going to wrap up for a minute.
Okay.
And when we come back, there will be a special guest. My name's Amalia, and this is Jamie, and we'll see you after the break. Thank you.
Are your children in the right car seat for their age and size? It may be too late to check when you're on the road. Fortunately, you're on the couch. Don't think you know. Know you know.
Welcome back to our Amazing Kids Show. I'm Amalia and this is Jamie. We have our experts today talking about robotics. We have Michael and we have Kelly, and they've brought us this thing. What is this thing?
Hey, so I'm on a competitive robotics team called Acme Robotic. Michael is one of our mentors, and this is our robot from last year. So it was built to pick up foam cubes in the front here using these wheels, and then dump them out the back using this dump bed that could lift up. So it's been since stripped for parts, since we're in the process of building a robot for this year, but it still moves around just fine.
That's awesome. It's got a lot of parts. Mm-hmm. So just about everything looks like it might have come from something else, a little bit recycled.
There are a lot of things that came from some other parts and kits. So these are drawer slides. They're actually the same sort of slides you would use in a drawer, cabinet drawers.
In your filing cabinet,
so
yeah.
these came from Hills Flat, and then we picked up other parts, and some of them were kit parts. Our kids actually manufactured all the side plates and the aluminum that's on here. They built that in machine shops.
These were milled out of a solid block of aluminum. And then this is a slide that we got from one of our sponsor companies that they had laying around.
Pretty cool. So then what's this thing here?
So this is
Looks like it goes on a TV.
It's the expansion hub. You can see it a little bit better from this side.
It's the brain.
It plugs into the phone, and so the phone we write, basically it's an Android phone, so we write an Android application that runs on here, and then this communicates with the expansion hub, and the expansion hub does all the work of actually controlling the motors and reading the various sensors.
That's incredible. So you would be the kind of person to design something on the Android. Have you ever thought about doing that?
I've actually never heard of that, but yeah, I would like to do that.
Yeah, but you've worked with the Lego stuff, and so
Yes.
it's the Lego Mindstorms kits are very similar in concept to what's going on here. It's just a little more familiar because they're made out of Legos, and you play Legos all the time, so you're familiar with the mechanics instead of it being aluminum and bolts and welding and all of this stuff. Then you just put Legos together, and then you make it do what you want it to do. But this is exactly the same sort of thing. It's just made out of metal instead of Legos.
A lot harder to take apart.
It's a lot harder to take apart. Although by the end of the season, you get very good at taking it apart. These guys can strip it down pretty fast by the end of the season. But we also brought this. So this is just another kind of example of a little mobile robot, Jamie. And so, but something like this, I mean, that's not very scary for you to, that's not much different from your Lego robots. I'll set it up there so the camera can see it. And that is also programmed with a phone. And so that would be something kind of like your next step for Mindstorms would be something you could do that. You can also program that. You were talking about the block languages, like Scratch and all those. So you can program those using the similar block language. There's a programming environment called Blocks, which is put out by Google, that you can use to program these types of mobile robots. So that might be in your near future.
So at my school, we used something that kind of looks like this. It was a little different. It was called like a scribbler, I think is what it was called. It was like the S3, I think was the newest that we had. And it was basically the same thing, except it was made so like it had all the sensors and stuff, except it was like basically pre-made, and you just coded it, and it had all the exact same sensors. This one's probably a lot nicer, but like it had kind of the sensors and the ability to code it.
So you can plug sensors into this.
You can plug sensors into all these ports here, and so you can pretty much use any sensor you want.
And that's a big part of robotics. We've kind of talking a little bit about robotics, and really robotics is responding to your environment using sensors and logic to respond to the environment to do a task, right? And so like on this robot, it has sensors to tell it when the lift is up. There's Hall effect proximity sensors in there. It has sensors to tell it how far it's moved. It has sensors to tell it how much it's rotated. There's lots of sensors in there for it to get a...
Here's one of the sensors we used last year. So on this little arm, there is a infrared proximity sensor that basically tells you how far away from the nearest surface you are. And so we had kind of vertical rails that we had to align the robot relative to. And so we would use this to tell where we were and then align. And so that would plug into one of these ports here.
How neat. So it seems like whatever level you wanted to start in coding, there's something for you to be able to make it work. You can actually have that instant gratification where you're working for something at any level with this different plug and play technology is what we used to always call it with the batteries.
Yeah.
This is really neat.
It is. There's a lot of tools out there available for you. There's a lot of people trying to promote STEM and promote early engagement for kids that are Jamie's age or younger, so they can get in, get excited about these sorts of things, and find out if it's for them. You know, there's some kids it's not for them. They just don't enjoy it, but other kids really do enjoy it.
Yeah,
So.
but kids like us really enjoy it. Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed. What was your favorite robot that you've been able to work on so far?
So I made one of the scribblers, as I said. That's basically the same thing. But I had a line sensor and a distance sensor, like a wall sensor, so it could sense whether there was a wall in front of it or not. And I coded it so that once it saw a wall, it would stop and it would turn left. So this was basically, it would go through a maze, kind of, where you only turn 90 degrees. So the most you can turn, the least, so you would go straight and then you could turn left or right, kind of. But I made it so it would sense a wall in front of it, and then if it would turn left, and if it saw a thing to the left, it would turn left 90 degrees, and if it saw something to the left, if it didn't see anything to the left, it would go straight. But if it did see something to the left, it would turn 180 degrees, so it'd be facing right. And if it saw something there, then it would just turn around and know it found a dead end and drive back.
Did you try it? Did you make a maze for it?
Yeah, well,
Cool.
kind of me and my friends used our arms.
Okay.
We put a hand in front of
arm
it
maze?
because we couldn't really build a maze for that sort
Yeah.
of thing because it would plow through paper
Yeah.
if it accidentally failed, and that would take too long, kind of. We only had an hour every morning, but we we would build this kind of with our hands, so it made it so it would have to go one direction.
And that's actually a really cool application of mobile robots. So, talking about a type of robotics is mobile robots that can move around on their own, right? And probably the one that people are most familiar with is a Roomba, like the little vacuum robot that drives around, right?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. But that's exactly what the robot's trying to do is, it senses a wall or it senses a chair or something, and it has to try to figure out, okay, do I go left, do I go right, do I turn around and go back the other direction? So that, what you're doing with your little scribbler is exactly what the people who make the Roomba have to figure out as well. Like, oh, there's stairs. Am I going to fall down the stairs if I keep driving? Or, and it keeps kind of a map in its, in its memory of where have I been, where am I going? Oh,
And
yeah,
it remembers.
There's stairs over there. I can't go over there. That kind of thing. So.
Is this a machine that has that trending or remembering? Would this kind of machine learn its direction? Like you said, it has a sensor here. Would it start to learn its environment?
No, so we were competing on a playing field that was always the same.
Okay.
So the field never changes. So the important part is it figuring out its position relative to the field, but the field itself is always the same.
Neat. So each machine, it's just another feature of the machine, whether it wants to do that or not. And you all have to decide in your brains if it wants to or not.
If it fits the application or not.
If it fits the application.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. What are you most curious about on this thing?
Just kind of how it could. So you lined it up using that thing, correct?
Yeah.
So that's just basically. Yeah. So it just lines it up, and then you would know where to line it up and such, and so. Was the only challenge that this completed the foam blocks thing, or did it have other?
There were other stuff, but the mechanisms for that have been taken off.
Okay.
So there was a little plastic thing that we had to reach out and grab, and there was a 1 foot high wall, and we had to stick it out 3 feet past the wall. So this slide that you see here was actually the first stage of a cascading slide that would reach out 3 feet in front of the robot. But that's been taken off.
Oh, for parts.
Yeah.
For this year.
Yeah.
So basically, you just are doing
Recycling.
Yeah.
recycling your parts, so you don't have to spend a lot more money this
Right.
year.
That's correct.
That's a very good idea to be able to use, and then you can get even more creative. You keep using these different parts and find out different applications for them.
Did you use those ties down there to like make it so eventually it would have to stop?
These?
At a certain, yeah.
Yeah, so these zip ties just reached out and would grab a block even if the block wasn't quite in contact with the wheels.
Oh,
They're like fingers.
And then they would
Oh,
collapse
neat.
against it when the block actually was in contact with them.
And those are just little zip ties
Yeah.
that you would use for whatever, making your fence.
Yep. It's- and it actually makes a huge
interesting is that?
huge difference. We when we put the zip ties on, things started working a lot better. So it's like that 5-cent part that actually makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So.
Just have to get creative.
You know, and as you're playing with stuff, Jamie, that's something to remember is that, something laying around in your kitchen could very well be the thing that you need to make it work.
so like a fork.
Probably, sometimes, yeah.
A lot of times, yes.
This is handlebar tape off of a bicycle handlebars. It's just something for a little bit of a cushion there. This is surgical tubing. We use it as spring. The paint roller we kind of already talked about a little bit. This is just a good old paint roller there.
Just a regular old
Just
paint
a regular
roller
old paint roller.
that was in the supply closet, probably.
So there's a lot of, if you have the imagination and the interest to work on things, there's a lot of household items that can be turned into fun toys, right? Cardboard box is a classic example, right?
Agree. I'm really curious about the batteries. I love figuring out what kind of power things need and what makes it go. It looks like the batteries are really similar in these two things.
Yeah, they're both nickel metal hydride. I think they're 30,000 milliamp hour batteries, and so they power the robot.
That's great. Could you have a runaway robot? Has that ever happened to you at a competition, runaway robots?
Definitely runaway robots happen.
Yeah.
We have kind of a joke on our team that we'll do robot ballet at least once every season. That's just the robot just spins and spins and across the field and just crashes into stuff. And
Oh my gosh. And just goes
it just
for
goes,
it.
yeah.
I would really stink in the finals.
Yeah, yeah. It does.
So it's not just your coding and making sure that all those codes are perfect, but then also putting it into fruition, putting it into reality. Is there anything else that you'd like to ask our experts?
Yeah, so what would I want to study in high school and college to become like robotics
Math.
major?
I
Math.
think like math's probably what everything is based on.
So yeah, Kelly's a senior in college, high school. Not aging you too much too quickly. And senior in high school, and so you can talk a little bit about like what you've studied.
Yeah, I don't know. At high school, where are you thinking of going to high school? If you want to go to NU, just
I don't know.
take all the math classes you can.
I don't really know. Maybe Godoti. I tried to.
Physics,
I
like
don't know.
and physics classes are important, right? Especially for mechanical systems.
And a little bit, more than that too, I would say hands-on experience is huge, right? Right now you've had a little bit of hands-on experience with the Legos and the scribblers and stuff like that. And while it's really important to get the theoretical backgrounds by taking the math and physics and chemistry and all those classes, there's also a lot of enjoyment can be had out of just the hands-on experience, right? Sometimes
Agreed.
you might have hands-on experience and decide, actually that's not as much fun as I thought it was, and go do something else. That's great, and you'd much rather do that before you went through 4 years of college, right? Studied all that math before you figured that out. But and you can also kind of get bogged down in like, oh man, all this theoretical studying that I'm doing and all these tests and stuff like that, and where really I want to just build robots. And it's important to do that stuff, but it's also important to have a chance to get out there and get your hands dirty and do some battle bots or whatever.
Yeah, and have
some
fun with it. Exactly.
Yeah, because you will enjoy it a lot more if you have some fun along the way. And I'd say, post high school, you definitely want to look at an engineering college of some sort, you know.
I want to go to Stanford or MIT.
Okay.
All right.
Those are big goals, and that's
I
great.
love these goals.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
fantastic. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being on our show today. I really appreciate it. It was great to meet you. It was great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us for Our Amazing Kids. We'll see you next time.